Hello, and thank you for joining me today in this session. My name is Kacper Łodzikowski. I'm Vice President of AI Capabilities at Pearson, where I lead a team of scientists and engineers who develop AI systems for assessment and teaching and learning of languages. And with my other hat, I'm also a researcher and lecturer in AI at Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznań in Poland, where I'm based. So I'm also a part-time educator like many of you, and I always appreciate this opportunity to spend time with fellow educators and exchange thoughts on the future of AI. And just like many of you, I'll be returning to teaching in a couple of weeks. In Poland, we start in October. I'll have my first class next week, and obviously AI is going to be a big topic. And it is impacting the way we as teachers teach and as how our learners learn. So I wanted to share with you today some thoughts on how we at Pearson approach the philosophy and design of applying AI systems for our products for teaching and learning. And I wanted to start this session by asking you, and please feel free to respond in the chat. Like, does your classroom rely on any AI tools or generative AI tools at the moment? Do you use maybe any of our products, or do you use external services like ChatGPT maybe and Copilot? Okay, so we've got mostly no's. Some people saying yes for ChatGPT, some people saying yes for Copilot. It seems to me like the room is like maybe like 80% split into those who use it for something and those who don't. And you wouldn't really be alone in that. And actually, research so far has shown that most people still don't find generative AI useful. So this chart by Benedict Evans shows that out of the people in developed countries who are asked about whether they use ChatGPT, like most of them actually used it, which is quite an achievement for a product. But the glass is half empty because most of the people who used it only used it once or twice, and they haven't really found that good use case for what they do. And when I speak to teachers and students, and when I look at other pieces of research, this usually depends on which geography we're looking. So if you look at the US, for example, depending on the research, depending on the study, you can either have like up to 100% of the student population at a given university that self-report that they use a generative AI tool for studying, and usually about 40 to 50% of them say that they also use it for homework submissions, so for like writing essays and other types of work. And if you look at Poland, for example, like where I'm based, or Central Europe, that number is lower. When I ask my students, we just asked our first year students at university, and it turns out 67% of them are not using any of those tools, be it for studying or for entertainment or for any other use case. So that level of AI literacy is quite low. So I wanted to ask you now, what do you think is a good use case for AI or generative AI in education? Like, for those of you who found it, like, share with us, please, like, what do you use it for? Okay, so we have people consulted in case of doubt, for self-development, for lesson preparation, for creating lessons, for creating quizzes, PowerPoint presentations, role play dialogues, brainstorm ideas. Oh, checking for plagiarism, that's actually quite interesting. Developing tests, lesson planning. Okay, so I would say the biggest use case seemed to be for teachers to create classroom materials, like ranging from lesson plans to maybe like lesson hooks, exercises, and other types of assets. And it looks like some of you already actually have students engaged in the work as well. So I see some of you actually engage students in prompting of models, which I think is also a good use case. So what I wanted to sort of show you today is what we've been doing at Pearson when it comes to AI. And I think I'm always proud when I think about it, that Pearson has been pioneering the use of AI in education for nearly 3 decades now. And we've helped advance numerous fields related to assessment and testing theory and psychometrics, which is a study of how you make assumptions about what people know and don't know. And I think that's kind of one of the answers for why I would say we know how to apply AI, because we've done it before it was cool, before it was actually, considered to be a must-have in education, because it was always a design choice for it. I wanted to show you some examples. This is an example product called the Intelligent Essay Assessor, developed in the late 1990s, that relied on this idea that if you collect enough data, such as essays scored by teachers, just like many of you would score essays, you annotate them, highlight which bits you like, highlight which bits should be improved upon. If you collect enough labeled, annotated essays, you can then input it into a couple of different models that deal with how you rate style, how you rate grammar, and so on. So the main idea of machine learning, which is a subfield of AI for a couple of decades, was if you collect enough data that shows you how a human achieves a given thing, how teachers mark students' essays, then you can train a machine learning model that will mimic the way that humans score essays. And this is a screenshot from that product, which has been operational for many, many years now, where the goal is to give students some feedback for developing writing skills, to encourage them to retry and improve when a teacher is not available for scoring or repeated scoring of the same work. And that, those types of machine learning models, they have been used at Pearson for many years now, and they've been used for formative assessments, so helping you with homework assignments, for summative assessments, such as high stakes end of semester assessments. And Pearson has been doing this for language skills and cognitive skills, such as reasoning over essays, as well as math reasoning and other types of reasoning. And another example of this work we've conducted for over 2 decades now is spoken language assessment. And again, that's a similar idea. I'm showing you on the screen a research paper from the late 1990s, as well as an instruction card for a test you would take over the phone. And that relied on some of the same ideas that an AI system won't replace a human. Humans have this innate ability to make quick, accurate judgments about language proficiency, but there are things that AI can do when it comes to assessing fluency, so like rhythm, for example, or pronunciation accuracy, concepts which are quite measurable instrumentally. And this is one example of a test that's been around for a long time now, and those methods which are established and proved before even the advent of generative AI. And I think the secret sauce at Pearson has been always not in thinking about how to apply the technology for a given problem, but how to really address the particular learning or teaching problem as a learning problem, not as an engineering problem. And at Pearson, we have, over the past years, published quite a lot of white papers describing how we think about designing systems for assessment and teaching and learning. So we would kind of try and understand and summarize for you and publish it for you what we think constitutes good learning and good teaching. And we'll have a link in the chat to those white papers. They're called the Learning Design Principles. And this is always the starting point for us, for my team and for me, whenever we think about developing a new system. We try to really understand what problem we're solving and what is the particular idea. Is it, an adaptive system? Is it something to do with active learning and self-regulated learning? We try to really understand what those learning design principles are that we could operationalize with AI. And it doesn't have to be generative AI necessarily. It could be more classical machine learning. And I wanted to show you this example from our higher education product. Before I focus on English language teaching and learning, just wanted to show you something we released last year as the first major education company and publisher. We introduced those generative AI features into our higher education textbooks. And I think this was a good example of where this opportunity of generative AI is, coming back to the question I asked you. And I think it is in the broadly defined personalization, where we think about the level, the amount, the detail of information you get. And in this case, the students can interact with a tutor within the digital textbook. So if they have a question that they didn't understand, they can ask for a summary. If they want to generate a couple of practice questions, they can do that. They can ask for feedback. And this is really what enables that self-regulated learning, which is an example learning design principles that we wanted to focus on in this case. Because we know that if you stretch the pace of studying, if you return to the material, and if you switch from just passive reading of a textbook and just read it once and forget it, if you return to the textbook and if you can actually interact with the textbook, ask it questions, get feedback on your understanding, then that creates that study discipline that you need to get better. That this interaction with the chatbot allows you to switch from passive learning to active learning. And whenever you construct your own meaning by writing and corresponding with the chatbot, that is really what helps people learn. And that's also what gives you the metacognition and that sort of aspect of being sort of more aware of what you know, what you don't yet know, and kind of be able to decide where you want to take it. And we have published online some preliminary results on what it actually means for students to use these types of tools. And we noticed that when we looked at the results of how people use these tools, they actually double the number of study sessions. So they spend more time with the textbook. So they spend more time actually interacting with the material and engaging with it. We noticed that when they, looking at the interactions with the tutor overall, at the themes, we noticed that they don't actually do what I think teachers are mostly afraid of, which is they don't just ask for the final answer. It turns out that students, if they have this opportunity, they actually ask questions that are higher on Bloom's taxonomy. So they would ask, they would kind of progress through understanding and analytical and sort of reflective questions. So they don't use it just for cheating on homework. The bit that I particularly like, because I've seen it in my own teaching, is that students often study for an exam, or they prepare homework late, at the latest possible moment. Usually, the homework or exam is due on Monday morning, and Sunday evening, you get, frantic emails, as to what's on the quiz or can we get an extension, and so on. And we saw that most of the usage of these study tools actually happens in the evening, which is exactly what we want. If the teacher is not available, then this is the next best thing that we can offer to students so that they can have this support and feedback when they need it. It's just in time. And students who use these tools also reported better grades. These are not yet experimental studies, so we'll have to see and measure that, but they reported expectations of better grades. They felt more confident. And we also noticed that they generally benefited from those sort of study tips that we introduced later on to the product that kind of help them understand how to interact with the AI-based systems. And I think that one thing that I really, really liked about this particular use case is that students could technically go to any off-the-shelf large language model or generative AI tool, like some of the ones that you mentioned, like ChatGPT or Gemini, and they could maybe get some answers from that. But we actually introduced these kinds of tools and AI systems right into the place where they are, so that we minimize the cognitive load. They don't have to switch between browser tabs and get distracted, but also to ground the output of AI in our trusted content, because it seems that, and as many of you have probably noticed already, despite the enormous potential for good, AI systems, especially large language models or LLMs, have this propensity to hallucinate. That is, confidently deliver incorrect information. And there is still some discussion in the AI community as to whether we can avoid that. It seems to be more of a feature of this particular type of technology than a bug, but it seems that it could be minimized by grounding AI in some sort of trusted source of knowledge. And this process is called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. You may have seen it already in the media. It seems to be like the next best thing we can do for now. And in our case, we have the advantage of being the world's leading learning company, and we have this amount of trusted content from world-recognized authors, which we can use to ground AI experiences to maximize their usefulness or the accuracy of the responses. And I wanted to switch gears in just a little bit, and maybe actually before I do that, let me go to the Q&A and actually answer some questions. We have a very good question in the comment from an anonymous attendee about, you say AI will not replace humans, but AI or machine scoring has replaced scoring, at Pearson since the late 1990s. And I think it's a very good question, and we should always be reflect on what are the things that can never be replaced and what are the things that can be replaced. Like, if we go back to sort of this idea that there are things we can measure very easily, and there are things we may want to measure initially, such as your knowledge of grammar rules measured by responses to multiple choices. And then there are things that we eventually want to measure. So whether you can actually speak freely, whether you can look at a graph and summarize it, whether you can give representation. This is really something that humans, up until very recently, it was only a human teacher who could do that. And I would argue that if we can introduce an AI system that helps to supercharge the teacher so that they don't have to read all the essays or listen to all the recordings, and manually grade all the homework, and for the students to wait for that, then I would argue that's actually a very good use case of AI, where it's in service of the needs of the teacher and the students. I'm a teacher myself, like many of you, and I have spent countless evenings and weekends grading essays and grading homework, and there is a point at which it stops. It stops being fun, and you really just want to get through it. And also your motivation drops down, and there's also some bias. The 50th essay you score, you may not be as attentive or as fair as to the first couple of ones you scored. So I would argue there are things that machines can do better for humans, and nothing will replace the human as the person who actually owns the entire end-to-end teaching and learning experience. Coming back to what we've done so far in at Pearson for English language assessment and teaching and learning, for a couple of decades now, we offered these assessments, these tests of language. And you may have heard yesterday's webinar from my colleague Jared about how we think about language testing. And a lot of those, actually, all of those AI-based tests that we offer, that you may have interacted with, they rely on like classical AI. They rely on this pipeline where when we develop the test, we design an activity, really focus on the traits we want to focus on, and the type of evidence we want to elicit from the learners. And that data, spoken responses or text responses, that is processed by trained humans. Speech is rated separately from what you said. So pronunciation is rated separately from what you said, so that we minimize the bias. And that human annotated data is passed on to machine learning models that are trained to mimic human scoring. And then we spend a lot of time validating those models. And again, like working with humans to see whether we can get a machine scoring to the level of expert human scoring. And today we are in the place where we can say that the machine agrees with the human very often. In fact, in some cases, two humans disagree with each other more on average than a machine agrees with the average human. This kind of approach for test development is very rigorous. It gives you valid results. It gives you reliable results and fair results, but it is also costly and time consuming. So this takes a lot of time. And some people ask me, and also and these webinars, this is the question I often get, like, why can't I just replace such a system with a large language model? Why can't I just use an LLM to do this type of assessment and scoring? And that's a very valid question. I would say, I would argue that out of the box, these current generation LLMs are unsuited for this type of summative, high stakes assessment. If you really want to get a certificate of proficiency, or if your study visa depends on it, that kind of system is not reliable. And I encourage you to play around with it. Run an example where you take an essay, you put it into an LLM, you ask for the essay to be scored. You can give some rubrics as well, and then open a new tab, refresh the page, and do it again and see what results you will get. And I'm pretty sure that the results will be different depending on the model, depending on the time of the day sometimes, because these models are not deterministic. They will give you different results. Your result may vary. So this is challenging because we really want to be able to control the behavior of a scoring system. Just like with humans, if we have humans who are properly trained to administer an exam or to sit in an exam committee or grade homework according to rubrics, you want to ensure that there's consistency and that there's explainability as to why a given decision was made. In the case of LLMs, my team and I, just like many other researchers and engineers, have studied those tools for a couple of years now before they became so popular. And whereas we see their potential, I'm going to show you how we use them in some of our products. We do still struggle, just like the broader community, in actually being able to control their behavior. It's sometimes surprising how, if you try and fix one bug within an LLM, how other things break. And it's actually hard to debug it. It's hard to really tweak those knobs to make it work well across the board. And this is increasingly problematic if we try to create more open experiences, where we try to have more open-ended conversations with the system, and there's potential for the system not only to be factually incorrect, but also to perpetuate some social cultural biases. However, I would argue that there are use cases where LLMs present opportunities. And this is for formative assessment, this is for practice, for feedback. It is easier than ever for companies like Pearson to decrease the time and cost of building somewhat less rigorous AI systems for test prep, for example, or for practicing collaborative skills with chatbots, or to creating virtual worlds with non-playable characters. And I'm going to show you some examples now, and I'll open it for questions in a second. But I just wanted to show you how we're applying this type of technology. One example that is coming out soon, later this year, is AI tutoring. So we've spent some time with my colleague Ilya Gogin, from whom you hear in tomorrow's webinar. We've been experimenting in building features that allow learners to engage in real-world scenarios, such as having a performance conversation at work or asking for a salary raise. And these are systems where you actually have a particular task to achieve, and you interact in a role play, and you get personalized scoring and feedback afterwards. And the idea here really is to engage in this authentic assessment, where, again, it's one of the learning design principles that we always strive for, where we really want to ground the assessment and learning experience in a real-life scenario which reflects the particular skills that are needed by the learner. In this case, this product is targeted at adult learners who may use English at their workplace. And to accomplish this task, they are given this lexicogrammatical scaffolding as to the type of language they should use. And after they finish a given conversation, they get a result that provides an overview of how they did and breaks it down as to how they accomplished the goal, which particular things that they were supposed to cover, they covered. And the one thing that I really like about this is that we use an LLM to drive this conversation. This particular aspect of it is not that different from a couple of other products you may see on the market. But what we really do, I think, differently from others, which I am quite proud of, is that we develop our own models for assessment and for feedback. And the advantage of that is kind of what I described earlier for language testing. We own the end-to-end pipeline. We know how the model behaves, and it's easy for us to debug it, to tweak it, and to maximize explainability. And I'll give you one example. Pronunciation assessment is something that's really on the rise for the past couple of years. But if you look at the market for applications that help you practice your pronunciation and fluency, they are all doing it wrong, because they focus on this outdated assumption that you need to sound like a native speaker in order to be understood. Whereas we know from the past 3 decades of second language acquisition research that you don't have to sound like a native speaker, unless you're a spy maybe and you want to kind of blend in. But other than that, you have to be intelligible, and you don't have to be fully native-like accurate to be intelligible. And to do that, like the model that we trained for this particular product actually focuses on intelligibility rather than nativeness. So we increase fairness of AI because we help ensure that the model is not biased against people who maybe they achieve the task, they check all the boxes in this particular task, but they have a non-native pronunciation. Maybe there's like a slight accent. But if that slight accent doesn't impact intelligibility, then that shouldn't matter. And that's one example, that's one advantage of owning this end-to-end pipeline for scoring, and kind of taking the best aspects of a large language model, which can drive the conversation, but it's potentially biased and not as good for scoring, and blending it in with proprietary outlook on sort of second language acquisition research and proprietary technology. These kinds of speaking practice experiences that I just described are also available in our courseware products. So if you teach adults with Speak Out, for example, you will see our speaking practice feature, which allows you to practice real-life scenarios, such as ordering at a cafe or similar experiences where you have a task that you need to accomplish, and there are a couple of ways of doing that, and the AI will give you the feedback. When I asked this question at a previous webinar we hosted in March, which by the way, I encourage you to go back and see that webinar. We'll have a link in the chat to that previous webinar. I asked this question at the previous webinar. We got responses from a couple of hundreds of teachers, and I got to say, I was on the one hand surprised, on the other hand kind of reassured that data privacy came on top, and actually most over half of respondents actually put data privacy as the biggest barrier compared to bias or regulation, for example. And I think that's a valid concern. And as teachers, we should always ask how our students' data is used by AI products. I'll give you another example. So this is one of our products in Mondly by Pearson, our product for learners who want to learn on the go from a mobile device. And apart from adult learners, there are also young learners using this product. And to sort of cater for that particular use case, Luna, so the chatbot available in Mondly by Pearson, uses a proprietary AI system which actually doesn't rely on any of the external, providers of AI, such as GPT by OpenAI. And this has its disadvantages because it's not as flexible. Arguably the scenarios and role plays are more fixed. You cannot ask Luna about the Olympics or the match last night. But it is again coming back to the question as to when we can and should use AI to help our learners learn. It is the next best thing if the learner is shy and doesn't want to practice with peers or with people that native speakers in the classroom, or if they just cannot act as a tutor for extra practice. So I would argue that this is like the perfect use case for getting that extra bit of speaking practice. And in this case, the data is actually very well managed because it doesn't go outside the Pearson ecosystem. I wanted to show you something that this is not a product or service that is released just yet, but I'm quite excited about it, and I'm quite proud for how the teams at Pearson are pushing the envelope for blending AI and teaching workflows. So what I'm showing you is an existing service in Monthly by Pearson where learners can sign up for classes with peers and with teachers. And we are prototyping an approach where we add our assessment models in the background of the class, and everyone's informed about this. And at the end of that classroom session, that virtual classroom session, both the teacher and the learner get feedback on how they did. So you see the teacher screen in the center and the learner screen on the right. And when we've piloted this so far, we've got very good feedback from teachers because in a large class, especially if it's not leveled, there's only so much you can do. There's only so much time you can spend with a particular learner to cater for their needs when it comes to remediation or stretch. You really need to sometimes move on, and in many cases, that particular learner doesn't get the attention or the feedback they need. In this case, at the end of the class, the teacher gets a report showing the class-wide, average scores, as well as how particular learners did, how they did with meeting the class goals, whether they used the vocabulary that they were supposed to use in this class, whether they used the lexical grammatical structures, whether they made any pronunciation errors, and so on. And we noticed that this is really what helps teachers prepare for the next class and to kind of get this holistic overview of where they need to focus on next, maybe if they need to spend more time with a particular learner. This is a concept, a prototype for virtual learning. But if we think about where AI is going, how AI systems are embedded in our lives on devices, home devices, smart glasses, this is, I think, an interesting direction because AI is becoming this next agent in the classroom. So we have the teacher, we have the learner, we have the peers, and now we have the AI, which is, it can play the role of the peer, it can play the role of the teacher, it can play an enabling role of a helper to give the teacher some support, to give the learner some support. And I would be super interested to hear from you in the chat whether that's something you would be interested in using. Do you see a use case in the physical classroom? Like what emotions and thoughts and feelings is that raising? And in my case, I would be super interested in using this particular type of AI feature in my classroom because I know there's in a classroom of 30 or more people, there's only so much time I can spend with a particular teacher, a particular learner as a teacher. And while prototyping these types of systems, we learned a couple of things I wanted to share with you because I think they speak to how we can really sort of help increase the levels of trust in AI among teachers and how to kind of bring this confidence into AI solutions. Because I know many people still struggle to understand what AI really is, and rightfully so, have concerns about the bias or the accuracy or the reliability of those systems. And what we noticed, and addressing some of the questions in the comments before, these systems won't replace a human. The human is still in control. And it's up to the human to decide what they want to do with this particular information. I would argue that the more information we provide to the teacher and the learner about how they did in the class, what can they improve on, the better. But overall, we noticed that, and we agree with the fact that the human always needs to be in control. Another aspect that we noticed is that whatever the AI provides needs to be explainable. And that example that I gave you about how we approach building models for pronunciation assessment, I think that's a good example where we can trace all the decisions as to why an AI system gave you a particular score or feedback. That can be traced to the assumptions we baked into that system as to what we think, based on research, constitutes intelligible speech in terms of segmental accuracy, how you pronounce particular phonemes or sounds, or suprasegmental features, so how you manage intonation, rhythm, and so on. And I wanted to show you one final thing, and this is a prototype that we are working on now, and we are testing with teachers, and we're also extending an invitation to you. If there's anyone in this group who would like to prototype this new product for teachers, we'd be happy to hear from you. The idea here is to, coming back to what you shared with me at the beginning of this seminar, like many of you use AI teachers for generating personalized lesson plans or classroom materials. I think that's a very good use case for AI for teachers. The feedback that we sometimes get from teachers is that they can't always trust the results. And to give you one example, the level, be it at the measured by vocabulary level or vocabulary diversity, or the richness of grammatical structures and complexity of lexicogrammatical structures, that is something that's quite difficult to control. Because of the data that AI models were trained on, and because of the nature of how they work and how hard it's sometimes to predict what they will output, we notice that teachers sometimes struggle with getting generate materials that are aligned to the exact topic or the vocabulary or the language they want to cover in a given class. And also it's often not at the exact level that they want for it to be. So we are prototyping a product for teachers which allows them to either generate their own content or use Pearson content, a Pearson course book, a teacher's book, to generate lesson hooks, activities, and other types of assets, which I think makes it super easy for, if you're in a particular textbook, particular chapter of it, particular lesson, you can just ask the system to generate me a couple of more activities or ideas for classroom activities. And you can use it on the go while you're commuting for a class. And it's just make it just a tiny bit easier to generate personalized materials, as well as ensure that they are grounded in proprietary pedagogy and the exact level that you're teaching in a particular class. And maybe my final slide, and I'll open up for questions. I have a couple of more slides, but I wanted to really focus on this one. Those of you who are based in the EU have probably heard a lot about this, about the EU AI Act, which is proposing a framework for how AI systems should be built and managed. If you live in the EU, you'll be familiar with this certification mark, which every product that's sold in the EU has to have. In 1.5 years, AI systems will have to undergo such certification and will receive such a stamp of approval. And this is really something that I think is really needed and actually also helpful, both for companies like Pearson, as well as consumers like you, to ensure that the use of AI in education, which is categorized as a high-risk use of AI, that it meets the requirements set by the EU to make sure it's safe and that you can be confident in applying and deploying these tools within your teaching and learning practices. So just to give you a flavor of that and of what that entails, companies like Pearson or any other company that wants to use AI in the product will have to demonstrate that they understand where the AI they use comes from. Was it trained on copyrighted data? Was it trained on legal data? They will have to present technical documentation and evaluations and a model for how they manage risk of if something goes wrong. And also they will have to report all the accidents to authorities, which I think is a good thing overall, because we, at this point, we are in a place where, to use an analogy, we have very advanced AI systems like very fast cars moving on very open highways and busy highways, but we don't really have the road code, the traffic code to govern the use of that technology. So I'm really looking forward to that and seeing how others in the market adapt. I would argue that Pearson, having done AI for 3 decades and having this expertise in designing AI systems and evaluating them, will have an edge. And I'll be interested to hear from you whether you think that is a differentiator. And I'll stop at this this particular slide. But one piece of research Pearson conducted recently, and you'll get a link in the chat, is a survey ran among teachers and students in the UK, but I think the results apply broadly. Many students really want to learn more about AI. They really want to use AI for learning. They want to use AI in the classroom. They want to use AI just in their general life because they know that it will impact their lives and they feel unprepared for that. So I think there is something to be said about how we as teachers can help students become more literate when it comes to AI use. And I'm happy that you invested this time this week to attend all these webinars because on Monday we've had Dr. Jules White talking about how to prompt large language models, how you can improve your proficiency in using this technology. The recording is already available online. On Tuesday, we had Victoria Lansdowne talking about ethics and the framework for how to really use AI in your classroom and with your students. Yesterday, we had Jared Mello, my colleague at Pearson, sharing with you how we think about and involving AI in language testing, which is something that students still encounter and will encounter AI in that form increasingly. And tomorrow we have a session by my colleague Ilya Gogin, who will show you how you can approach the process of developing your own AI prototypes and testing it with your student. And maybe even, like some of you in the chat, involving your students in the process. I think it's crucial, and this is my final slide, I promise, because the research shows that employers, if they have a single job and they have 2 candidates for that job, they will pick the candidate who has AI skills as opposed to the candidate who meets all the who ticks all the boxes but doesn't have the AI skills. And our students, especially those in secondary schools, at universities, are entering a completely new workforce, a completely new economy that is AI driven. And if there's anything we can do to help them become just a little bit more proficient in their use of AI, if you can involve them in your thinking about AI, and you can involve them in co-creation of materials with AI, just like we saw on Monday, or just like we will see tomorrow. And I think that this is just one added benefit we can provide to our learners, on top of understanding how AI systems work, on top of applying them via products or via your own work in just a more aware and literate way. And I'll pause at this. Please feel free to scan this code or use the link from the chat to go to a page where you can register for tomorrow's webinar or see the previous webinar. And I also encourage you to complete the survey. There's a link in the chat. You can get a certificate if you attend all 5 sessions. There's also an option there to sign up to pilot the upcoming AI tool for teachers that I mentioned. And I would also love to continue the conversation. Please feel free to ask me any questions directly. You can find me on LinkedIn. And I'll just spend a couple of minutes answering your questions from the Q&A right now. Okay. Oh, so many questions. Okay, let me take them from the top quickly. The initial example that I showed the book, that's actually, that's generated dynamic. So whenever you ask an AI system for a summary of a chapter, that's generated on the spot for you. And we're quite comfortable with the answer quality because the model first actually looks at the chapter and grounds its answer in the trusted content. Okay, can machine scoring be equal to human brain? Well, that's actually a very good question. Without really going philosophical, we still don't really know how human brains operate. If you look at the evolution of AI, between the 1940s and the 1990s, actually early 1990s, the general approach was to think about AI in a quote unquote symbolic way. So you try to really understand how humans think about the world, how they create maps of concepts, and how to build rules for AI systems to operate. That didn't really work well. Those rule-based systems didn't really scale. They were good for rudimentary tasks, but not really for the more advanced types of tasks that we see them performing today. What we see today for the past 2 decades, we've seen a rise in what is known as a connectionist approach. So people built those artificial neural networks, those AI algorithms that are loosely inspired by the biology of the human brain. And if you think about an algorithm for scoring essays that I described, or an algorithm for recognizing cats versus dogs in pictures, they operate on the same assumption that if you have enough data that shows a given thing, like a cat or a dog, it's nicely annotated, or an essay and how you score it. If you have enough data, you can train a machine learning model, a neural network, to automate a particular task, such as recognizing cats and dogs in images or scoring essays. And that performs relatively well. It's still probably not the way how a human brain operates, because some of the biggest supercomputers in the world are more powerful than the human brain. But the human brain has the advantage of the density of connections, and it sort of operates. It's slower, but it operates on the principle that the connections are much denser. And there is also something to be said about like the biology of the human body, and like the sensory grounding that we have in how we perceive the world, which AI systems don't have, because they are mostly trained on text, maybe on images, but it's hard for them to really grasp certain aspects, just physics, or these models still really struggle with transcribing speech. If you ask an LLM, provide a phonemic or phonetic transcription of something, or you go to an English dictionary, you take the phonemic transcription from the dictionary, the one in slanted brackets, and you ask for an allophonic transcription, the one that is more detailed. You will see that most of those models still really struggle with that. And that's because they don't have this association between speech and text, and they really struggle with diacritics and kind of putting it all together. And we have a question about intelligibility. So how we train a model for intelligibility. It seems that intelligibility is inherently human. Something that's intelligible to me is not always intelligible to my colleagues. Actually, a very good question, Jessica. Thanks for asking it. It's two ways. So one, because we start all our research and model development with academic literature review, and my team and I, many of us are still academics. We still work in the academia as AI researchers and practitioners. We always go to that research on what we know about the intersection of AI and pedagogy. In the case of intelligibility, there's quite good research. It's still emerging. There's still no certainty, but the past 3 decades, especially the past 10 years, have provided us with enough evidence of what really constitutes speech that is intelligible, that is readily understandable, versus speech that is comprehensible, which is something different, which means what's the level of effort needed for you to understand someone. And these are two different things, because you can understand someone maybe, but you may really struggle with that cognitively, and you may have to spend some time adjusting to that, versus native-like speech, like accurate speech. And there are some features which make speech intelligible or comprehensible or native-like. And apart from grounding our models in that research, we also actually collect real-life speech examples of intelligible versus non-intelligible speech. We have human raters rate that according to our own rubrics and scales. And we just train models to actually mimic human scoring on a wide range of samples. So that's like one way you can ensure that the model is relatively fair in how it approaches intelligibility. And maybe one final question. Okay, so we have a question about assessment and reliability bias and safeguarding. By Kyriakos. Thanks so much for asking these questions. Like, one thing we will do now is certainly stick to our tried and tested approach, where we use pre-generative AI era models for providing results which are valid. So the models measure what they are supposed to be measuring. They are reliable, because if you rerun the test, if you take the test on Monday morning, Friday evening, you'll get the same result, as opposed to a human scored test, which may give you different results if the human is, decaffeinated or otherwise tired or bored. And they are fair, so they are trained on a wide population of learner data to ensure we don't bias. The test is not biased against a particular subset of regional accents, for example. And we are experimenting with ways of introducing LLMs into that pipeline, but we want to be really clear about the benefits. Like one benefit I could see if it's easier or faster to develop these tests, or to lower the price of those tests, or to make them available on device, so that you don't have to go to a physical test center. Also, that we can introduce more open-ended, more interactive types of assessment, where you actually need to interact with an avatar or with an AI system in a role play like scenario. And we are prototyping approaches to that, but we really want to make sure that we've evaluated them properly before we introduce them in the tests, because our tests need to meet very high bar for a range of use cases, such as being accepted by governments for study visa purposes. And I think we'll stop at this. Thank you again for taking the time to attend. I really appreciate the fact that you took an hour or out of your evening or morning, wherever you are in the world. And I hope I see you tomorrow in tomorrow's webinar. Thank you.